Hello, good evening. Welcome to this evening's live webinar on the subject of NLP, myth, magic and mystery. The reason I'm doing this webinar is because as an NLP master trainer, I am constantly receiving emails, WhatsApp messages, etc., asking me questions about NLP, asking me to explain some of the areas of NLP, and also requests saying, when are you running a program in Fiji? When are you running a program in Poland? When are you running a program in all kinds of corners of the world? And I wish I could duplicate myself so that I could do programs in all these parts of the world. So my objective this evening is to offer some background to the wonderful thing that is Neuro Linguistic Programming, to cover off some of the myths and the misunderstandings that surround this wonderful topic, and to talk about some of the areas where NLP can be of benefit. So I guess the best place to start would be by telling the story. So here we go with the story. Once upon a time, in a land far away, in a part of the world called California, there was a man by the name of Richard Bandler. Now, Richard was and is a mathematician. He had a spectacular interest in models and patterns. And he was also interested in and fascinated by the world of therapy. And he hooked up with and began working with a man by the name of John Grinder. And John is and was an expert in linguistics. I believe at one time he'd even worked with the CIA on encoding, decoding, and on, shall we say, interview techniques using linguistics. And John and Richard got together and they decided that it would be fascinating, interesting, and probably potentially financially rewarding to create a new, fast model of therapy. And they recognized that the best place to start would be to study the people who were already considered to be experts in their field. So they went out and they began a process which has now become known as modeling, by looking at people like Milton Erickson. And Milton Erickson is and was recognized as the father of hypnotherapy. In his heyday, he was probably working with around 10 patients, as he called them, per day, with a phenomenal success rate. Phenomenal success rate. And what they discovered in Milton Erickson were several things. One were the underpinning beliefs that he carried about himself, about his patients, and about the world in general. The second was the amazingly artful language that he used in taking his patients on a trance-based journey of transformation. And the third was his whole attitude to himself, life, and his work. And from this, they carried some presuppositions for success. They carried forward some amazing language patterns, which we now know as the Milton model. And they thought, well, here is the basis of a really tremendous, fast-working, highly effective therapy model. But it's not complete. So they began to look at, explore, and work with a lady by the name of Virginia Satir. And Virginia was a family therapist of phenomenal excellence. She had a tremendous interest in and expertise in communication, verbal and non-verbal, and her artful way of asking questions in order to, first of all, dig down into the specifics of an issue, and then to facilitate her clients in coming out of that by finding a solution was impressive, to say the least. So having studied Virginia's beliefs, her attitudes and her language patterns, they then created a thing which they called the meta model. They also studied her expertise in non-verbal communication, particularly the way in which we tend to use our hands. And so now they had the Milton model and the meta model, and they wanted to add to that. So they went out and they looked at work from the world of Gestalt and Fritz Perls. They looked at some of the work of Gregory Bateson and various other people. And what they came up with in the end was a package. Now that package was around attitude, around linguistics, around techniques, around beliefs, around values. And they put it all together and they created this amazing therapeutic journey. So having created this and having tried it on for size with themselves and realized that by replicating what they had learned, they actually had a phenomenal change model, they then had to decide what they were going to call it. Now, there are some very nice stories around this. The first is that after one too many bottles of California Red, they decided that they wanted to find a name for it that would be completely befuddling and would sound very impressive. So they decided to call it Neuro Linguistic Programming. And that in itself was fairly impressive. The second story, which I quite like, is that on his way home one evening, Richard Bandler was stopped by a traffic cop for slightly exceeding the speed limit. And the traffic cop, on checking his credentials, asked him what it is that he did. And he said, "Oh, I'm a neurolinguistic programmer." And apparently the traffic cop was so impressed and so overawed that he sent him on his way without writing him up a speed ticket. Now, whether either of those stories are true or not, really, I don't think it matters, because they both still make me smile, having seen and met both of the gentlemen in question. The fact is that neurolinguistic programming takes its name from three simple thoughts. The first is that every notion, every idea, every thought, every behavior that we have triggers a neurological process. So if you pick up a glass of water, you create a neurological pattern. Even now, when I think about picking up that glass of water, that neurology still fires. So that's where the neuro comes from. The linguistic is very simple, and that is, it's based on the language that we use in communicating with others, and equally, perhaps more so, more importantly, the way in which we communicate with ourselves. Because if you listen, if you know what you're listening for, if you listen to somebody in conversation, they will give you huge clues as to what's going on in here and as to how they create and work within their model of the world. And the programming, well, that's because from the very moment of our birth, in fact, some would say from the moment of our conception, we are being programmed. We're being programmed by others. We're being programmed by ourselves. We're being programmed by our environment and our situation. And neuro-linguistic programming takes the premise that if you have a program and you want to change it, then you can do so. It takes the premise that no one else can change you. They can only facilitate you in making your own change. So that's really the background of NLP. And where has it gone since then? Well, from those early and humble beginnings, it mushroom clouded. It's actually exploded. And since those early days in the 1970s to today, there are now millions of people who've been trained in NLP and have used it to make tremendous changes in their own lives, and many of them to facilitate other people in making changes in their lives, whether it be through coaching, through training, through leadership, or whatever. The applications for NLP are phenomenal. They're phenomenal. I mean, it started as a therapeutic model. It is now recognized as probably one of the most powerful tools for personal development on this planet. Its applications stretch far and wide. For example, if you go into any organization, NLP can form the core of tremendous skill and knowledge as a leader, as a manager, phenomenal skill and ability as a salesperson. The language patterns, the non-verbal and verbal communication skills lend themselves so well to influencing and negotiating that it's incredible the results you can have. My own book, Countermove, A Guide to the Art of Negotiating, which has been very successful in the 7 years that it's been out there, is based almost entirely on NLP, even though many people don't realize it. In terms of motivating and self-motivation, there is no finer tool because of the ability to understand yourself, to set goals for yourself, and to create phenomenal self-belief, phenomenal self-worth, and a driving force like a dynamo. Then NLP can help you with that. I know that there are probably at least a couple of coaches watching this webinar even as I speak, and they will attest to the fact that some of the techniques and skills from the world of NLP are tremendously useful in very quickly changing habits, changing unuseful strategies, mental strategies that are not working, and exploding the kind of behaviors that we don't want to have. So whether it be that you want to manage your weight better, whether it be that you want to remove unuseful habits, from basic things like eating too much chocolate, right up to, I know several addiction specialists who use NLP as part of their toolkit. It's not their whole toolkit. It's a very powerful part of their toolkit in helping them to work with people who suffer from addictions at some fairly deep levels. So there's a whole raft of skills there. As a trainer, both in the corporate world and as an NLP master trainer, I've worked in over 30 countries now, and NLP has been at the heart of much of what I do. And I have to say that having watched some of the best trainers in the world, I'm incredibly impressed that invariably the best trainers are those who are NLP trained. Why? Because they understand how to use stage hooks and stage anchoring. They know how to use the language patterns that influence and educate the unconscious mind, that stimulate behavioral change in organizations and cultures and people through using that NLP. Some of the best public speakers out there that I know are NLP trained. It's not just about the NLP. A public speaker has to have much more than that. But once you understand how to really communicate with your audience, you can be tremendously powerful. In the world of healthcare, right here in the UK, I know that within our own amazing National Health Service, there are NLP trainers at work. There's a lot of NLP being taught and used within the NHS. And I'm glad to say that in our education system now, teachers are taking on, embracing and learning NLP in order to help them to improve continuously the learning experience of the young. Somebody there needs to mute their microphone, please. Can you all make sure they're muted? Thank you. I have a good friend in India who is regularly running parenting skills programs, which are based almost entirely on NLP, and are very popular and very successful. So the scope of practice for NLP is very extensive. If we dig down a bit further than that, let's look at specific areas in which that NLP can work. So let me take you on a little journey, if you like, a learning journey of somebody who comes in the door on day one of an NLP program and goes through that journey of discovery, self-discovery and discovery of others along the way. And it begins really with yourself, because all change happens at a personal level. You cannot go out into the world and change others. All you can do is facilitate and influence their change. So a traveller on this wonderful journey that is NLP will begin by beginning to understand themselves. And that starts really with understanding the kind of things that you want to achieve in your life. So we start to explore things like setting really well-formed outcomes for ourselves, setting powerful goals for ourselves, and checking those goals for their impact. You see, many speakers, many trainers, many books, many coaches will tell you about setting a goal for yourself. Got no argument with that. Brilliant. What many of them don't explain to you is that when you set a goal for yourself and you go about seeking to achieve it, you need to think about consequence, because for every action, there's a reaction. So for every change you make in your life, there is a ripple effect that can be far-reaching. So what we explore in the world of NLP is when we set a goal, what is the impact of that goal, its achievement or its non-achievement on ourselves, on our immediate surroundings. Now that can be our family, our friends and our loved ones, our community. It could be on our team, on our company, on our group, on our organisation, on the community as a whole. So it's that ripple effect of when you make a change, watch and see how that's going to impact across the board. You need to make sure that you're aware of that impact. We call it an ecology check, basically, in the world of NLP. So we look at things like that. We look at exploring our own sensory awareness of our world. Because you see, we go through life with if we're fortunate, a pair of eyes that see, a pair of ears that hear. The question is, how often do we actually look? How often do we actually listen? When was the last time you had a meal and really savoured the flavours of the food on your plate? When was the last time you went for a walk and looked at your surroundings? You know, I rise very early every morning and I go for a walk stroke run. I'm at that stage where I walk some of it and I run some of it, which is great. I like it like that. What I've noticed is that over the period since I began that, which was at the beginning of this year, I've watched my environment on that same route change day to day. As we've gone through the seasons, watching all of that environment change, from the temperature, from the plants, the trees, the leaves, even the clouds in the sky, everything changes on a day-to-day basis. And it's that sensory awareness of really noticing what you notice that for me was one of my early joys in the world of NLP. And then taking that a step further and understanding that by utilising that, you can actually start to read what's going on with people around you. You know, some of you may have watched some of these amazing TV programs like The Mentalist, where you have a guy who can basically tell so much about people, seemingly by magic, by mind reading, and it's not. What he's actually doing is using phenomenal sensory awareness. And some of that comes from the study of Milton Erickson. It was said that in working with a patient, he was so attuned to them that he could actually watch the pulse in their neck, and he would observe their breathing and all of the physiological changes as they were going through the stages of trance. So this sensory awareness is phenomenally useful. That traveler on that journey learns about connecting and creating a deep level of rapport with people. So whether that is for a business use, for building relationships, or just for making the world a nicer place, and wouldn't we all like that, then that is again a tremendously useful tool. And from therein, you start to really get into some of the tools, like understanding the language patterns, like understanding the way in which to listen to people's language and understand what it is that they're saying and what it is that they're not saying when you're in conversation. By being able to ask the right questions in the right way in order to get the answer that you need. By being able to understand the things that we believe about ourselves and about the world that either help us to fly or help us to sink. And being able to change the ones that are holding us back so that we become more capable of achieving our potential. Further along the journey, we start to look at our emotions. We start to look at how we have our own hot buttons, as I like to call them, or I heard them referred to as red flags a couple of days ago. So it's almost like someone waves a red flag and I just go. So learning to understand what it is that triggers behavior in us, and do we want to change the trigger or change the response? And that comes really from the world of Mr. Pavlov and his dogs, and the neurological response, the stimulus and response that is in all of us. Looking at things like changing things that we like into things that we don't like. Can you imagine if you were, as I have been at some stage, very fond of not a little chocolate, and very not fond of fresh vegetables and salads. Can you imagine being able to change what you like into what you dislike, and change what you dislike into what you like, and the impact that can have on your health and on your well-being? So these are just some of the things. You know, people come along with fears and phobias, and they learn very quickly how to shatter those, almost with a swish, just to remove fears, phobias, change unwanted habits. So it's a complete journey, and at the end of that journey, you go away with the kind of changes that you wanted to make. So this is not a case of you come in and you're brainwashed. It's a case of you come in and you learn and use the things that you want to learn and use. So that's the kind of basic guide. If you it's the quick bus tour to the world of NLP. And that's kind of led to some of the myths that are out there about NLP. And I want to just shatter one or two of those if I can. And the first is the number of people who say to me, "Oh, but this stuff is only for therapists." And my response to that, as I think I've already pointed out, is very simple, and that is that it started in the world of therapy, and it has gone way beyond that. Most of the top coaches I know are NLP trained. It's a kind of self-therapeutic journey, if you like. So if you want to be better, you don't need to be sick to be better. If you want to be better, then a good NLP program is the place to be. The second one, and the one that seems to cause so much stir, is this word manipulation. And people say to me, but NLP is manipulative. And they're often stunned when I say, yes, you're right, NLP is manipulative. But then every therapist, every coach, every speaking professional, whether it be in coaching, therapy, training, teaching, or whatever, is manipulative, because all manipulation means is to move something. So what you're doing is you are manipulating for good. just as a counsellor, a psychotherapist, a psychiatrist, a psychologist would, just as a teacher or a trainer does, by utilising language. The key to whether it's the dark side of manipulation or the force, if you like, manipulation, is in the intent. So if you want to utilise NLP for good, then that's great. If you want to utilise it for bad, then that's your choice. I have no control over that. I do have control over who I teach it to, and I'm very fussy who I teach it to. So if you decide you want to join one of my NLP programs, we will have a conversation before I allow that to happen. I've heard it described as mumbo jumbo and pseudoscience. Well, I think the very fact that there is a whole world of neuroscience out there now is already beginning to build the case and establish the case of credibility for the world of neurolinguistics. And the very fact that there are so many specialists in neurolinguistics springing up around the world has really put paid to that. So pseudoscience and mumbo jumbo, no. Does it work? Well, I've currently, I think I did a rough calculation not long ago, and I think I've probably seen in my programs around the world something like 15,000 plus people who've made the NLP journey, whether it's at practitioner or master practitioner or at trainer level, who will all attest to the effectiveness and the efficacy of NLP. So really that's it. I guess if you want to then take it to the nth degree, the way that I talk to NLP trainers and potential NLP trainers about this subject is very simple, and that is learn it, use it, master it, and then sell it. And because there's tremendous business potential there, as long as you are carrying it out ethically. So let me say thank you very much for listening to me speak. Now I'd like to throw the floor open to you. I've got the chat box on here, so if anybody has any comment or question, I will sit here patiently and give you time to ask your questions, and I will be very happy to answer them. Oh, you're all sitting looking at me in silence. You'll find a chat box somewhere on your screen. If you have questions, please feel free to ask. I'll give it a few more seconds for any feedback. Okay, in the meantime, let me throw this out there for you. In registering for this webinar, oh, hello from Emma Williams to everyone. Hello, thank you. Where is the best place to start to learn NLP? Talk to me. It's probably the easiest answer for that. What I was about to say is that I will be setting up and leading my first full NLP practitioner program here in the UK, which will go live towards the latter end of January. Now, most NLP programs, you will spend 7 days plus in the classroom, get a certificate, and that's the end of it. I have changed that. I am changing the way that works. My intention is that I am launching what I call the Complete NLP Practitioner Program. That will consist of, yes, 7 days of classroom training with me. It will consist of also becoming a member of a closed group, which will be an academy, a Complete NLP Practitioner Academy for 12 months. There will be a monthly one-to-one online with me, so you get a coaching session with me every month online. There will be twice a month, there will be a live webinar similar to this on a topic surrounding NLP. Now that could be NLP itself, or applications of NLP, or question and answer sessions. There will also be plenty of material online for you to download and use via our own dedicated Dropbox. So it will be a 12-month program. You may leave at the end of 7 days with an NLP practitioner certificate and a hypnosis certificate, and I will be including my own trademarked quantum transformation process in there, which nobody else teaches. It will be a full-on 12-month journey. And I will be putting out information on that soon. So we have some questions. So Emma, I hope that starts to help answering your question. Angela says, to clarify, you need to use it on yourself before other people. Oh, yes. Yes, because you cannot use NLP on other people. NLP is an attitude. NLP is a string of techniques that you can use yourself, and they may influence other people. You never do NLP to people, as I've heard others say. Ashutosh says, when are you coming to India? Easy question to answer. I will be coming to India at the beginning of April 2018. I will be there for about 4 or 5 weeks, so please watch out for me. Also, what does one need to know before attending a master's program? If you mean a master practitioner program, you must have your certificate as an NLP practitioner. You then need to produce that, and there may be some pre-training work depending on the trainer that you work with. For example, if you have your NLP practitioner certificate and you want to do my master practitioner program, which will happen probably second half of next year, then there is a pre-training questionnaire to complete. If you're in India and you're planning to do the master practitioner program with Dr. David Lincoln, and I think I will be involved in that in April and in September as well, then there's no prior learning required. You do need to know your practitioner level NLP. Please don't turn up at a master practitioner program not able to do the basics, because that is only going to cause you some issues in terms of the practice. So I hope that answers those couple of questions. Has anyone else got any questions to ask? No, you're all shy. Why are you so shy? Please talk to me. Okay, so in that case, I'm just watching, scrolling. Okay, in that case, I am going to close this session. Oh, here we go. Manju says, I have to count to 100 after I say, are there any questions, I think. How do we practice Milton model on self? Well, that's a really good question. The thing to do is to start to understand fully what Milton language is, and it's a language of influence. If you want to practice Milton model on yourself, start to look at what's happening around you and utilize what's happening, because one of the keys to Milton language and Milton model is utilization. A second is to make sure that you are in rapport with yourself. You know, much of the dis-ease in the world is because we are not entirely congruent. In other words, we are not saying and doing that which is happening in here. You need to be congruent with yourself, so your beliefs and your values are in line, in tune with what you're doing. So understand it fully. Tell yourself stories. You know, one of the great ways of utilizing Milton language on yourself is to write metaphors and write stories that help you to stimulate thoughts, patterns, and stimulate new thinking in yourself. And it's predominantly about how you communicate with others. Angela says, as an NLP practitioner, would you recommend doing it again, or do you have a practice program? Angela, you do ask great questions. So let me answer that for you. If you have done your practitioner program with a good certified trainer or master trainer, then you've got a choice. And the choices are: find another NLP trainer, talk to that NLP trainer and revisit the practitioner program in their model, because remember, although we may all teach similar things, we don't all teach the same elements of NLP, and we don't teach it in the same way. So sometimes it's really useful to get a second take on it. I have actually, in my early days, I participated in 2 practitioner programs, and since then I have sat in on dozens of NLP practitioner programs. So I've seen different styles, different takes, different perspectives on the world of NLP. So that's one way to do it. Another is to get together with like-minded people, perhaps who come from different schools of NLP, and compare, contrast, and practice your NLP. So I hope that helps. Manju says, how do I validate that I'm doing it right? This is in reference to my question on Milton Model. How do you validate that you're doing right? Great question. What I suggest you do there, and when I'm dealing with coaches, I talk about supervision a lot, because in my model of the world, any coach, like any therapist, should have a supervisor. Similarly, it's much the same as my response to Angela, and that is to get together with others, practice your art, practice your science, and get feedback. Because you see, there is this famous saying, practice makes perfect. Well, it doesn't. Only perfect practice will make perfect. Because if you simply practice the same thing again and again, and you're not doing it correctly, all you're going to do is bed in the mistake. So by practicing with others and getting feedback, you can constantly seek to improve and improve and improve. And Ashutosh says, what sets you apart from others as an NLP trainer? Well, that's not really for me to say, is it? It's not really for me to say. All I can say is this. I've been teaching NLP for 18 years. I've been a master trainer for 9 years. I've trained in over 30 countries. I have successfully worked with literally thousands and thousands of people from different cultures, different countries, different backgrounds. So what sets me apart? I'm different to the others because I'm me. And I don't have the kind of ego that says I'm better. I have my own spin on it. My take is that I make it as simple as I can. If you speak to a couple of the people who are on my current trainer training, they will tell you that my style of teaching makes it much quicker to learn, makes it much easier to learn, much easier to use, much easier to understand. So that's what I pride myself in, is that I help people. So I hope that answers your question. I'm probably the world's worst salesman when it comes to that, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm the number one, I'm the world's best. I am what I am, and I do what I do, and I do it damn well. Excuse me. Hope that answers your question, Ashutosh. Please feel free, any of you, to connect with me. My email address is ralph@ralphwatson.com. I'll say that again, ralph@ralphwatson.com. If you want to email me, you can connect with me via my Facebook page. You can connect with me via my LinkedIn profile or on Twitter. Happy to see any of you connect with me, and happy to answer questions for you. I think that's all there is time for from me. So I will count to 10. If nobody throws up a question, I'm going to say thank you very much and good night. I hope this has been helpful, and I will ensure that everybody who's been on here tonight receives information on that NLP practitioner program. And after that, it's entirely up to you. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for the great questions. Yes, it's being recorded, and each one of you will receive a link to be able to watch it. And I will be back real soon for another slice of the NLP cake. Thank you so much. Good night and have a great week, all of you.